The Winnipeg Jets are making multiple moves as ahead of their big upcoming game. They made some moves surrounding the AHL, but as well as Logan Stanley. We have a major update on his front as his return is imminent. We're going to break that down as well as discuss some other things ahead of the big game. But before getting into it, quick reminder to hit that subscribe button. If you're a part of the 70% who aren't subscribed to the channel, we're on the road to 6,000 subscribers. We also have an announcement, and I'm currently in a jet for this announcement. You can see behind me. We are launching, and we have a Winnipeg Jets Digest channel that is launched now. So in the pinned comment and the description as well, you will see a link to Jets Digest. We're going to be doing daily Jets videos over there. So of course, we'll continue Jets videos on this channel as well. But if you want a hub for only Jets news and more specific things, check out and scroll down and go subscribe to that channel. Your guys' support has been unbelievable, and we wanted to have a specific channel because we saw a lot of Winnipeg Jets fans out there. But Darius, let's talk about the Jets, and I will continue this video from inside this fighter jet. So obviously, the Jets had a brutal loss. They got curb stomped by the Florida Panthers. They lost 5-0. It was a bad game. It is what it is. But they've made some moves now, and some of them more important than others. And we just want to discuss all the transactions here. So the Jets reassigned Fabian Wagner to the Manitoba Moose. And I want to get your kind of thoughts on this. It's, again, not a huge move. We'll dive into the Logan Stanley move in a minute here, which is a bit more important. But what are your thoughts on Fabian Wagner being reassigned by the Jets? It was an interesting one.
Yeah, and he's coming over from the SHL right now, and it's not a huge move, but I think it gives the Jets a little bit of flexibility. He hasn't done anything crazy so far this season, but now he's coming over to the AHL, and I think they're going to try and develop this player a little bit. He's a 6th-round pick just 2 years ago, so he's still a ways away from the NHL, but I think they want him over in the AHL so they can kind of work with him and try and develop him to see if he makes the NHL. So not a big move per se. I think a lot of Jets fans are looking forward to the Logan Stanley news specifically, but it's an interesting piece of news here today from the Jets, and I think that they just want him over here so they can work with him more closely, and I think that's a good thing if you're the Jets and obviously a prospect, because they're going to be more hands-on with this guy. So we'll see how he develops and how it goes, but I think that's all that really is.
Yeah, I was going to say, more hands-on experience. He's only 20 years old, so now being in the Manitoba Moose system with all their development coaches and things like that, hopefully he can continue to develop and maybe at some point make an impact for the Winnipeg Jets. But speaking about making an impact with and for the Winnipeg Jets, we have some interesting things to discuss, and we'll discuss some of the games, things like that. But Scott Arniel said today that Logan Stanley would be on the next Jets road trip, although he doesn't believe the defenseman will get on the ice for the next 4 or 5 days. So this is very good news. Well, it depends. I know a lot of Jets fans out there aren't a huge fan of Logan Stanley, don't want him on the ice, but health-wise, his return is imminent. Now, again, he's not going to play probably for the next 4 or 5 days, but this injury has been lingering for a little bit. It does seem like it's not going to keep him out for any longer than a week or two here now. And it's interesting because Logan Stanley, he's kind of been a hit or miss player for a lot of Jets fans out there. And again, he hasn't been very good this season. He hasn't really been phenomenal throughout any period of his career. He's had a couple of crazy playoff games, if we remember a few years ago in 2021 against the Habs, I believe it was. But at the end of the day, Logan Stanley is a solid defenseman, and we talk about what the Jets need at this upcoming trade deadline. It is a defenseman, and that's the only hole they have. Their third pairing defenseman, whether you want to talk about, Fleury, Hayden Fleury, whether you want to talk about Logan Stanley factored in there. So Colin Miller has been solid to start the year. I think their plan at least is to get Logan Stanley back in the lineup when they can, and this is the first step towards that. So by bringing him and making the move to bring him on this road trip, there's some interesting things to take from it. We'll dive into the lines here in a minute, but first I just want to kind of get your thoughts there. Logan Stanley, to either some Jets fans' dismay or the positive side of it, he's going to be returning at some point in the coming weeks.
Yeah, whether you like it or not, it sounds like he will be back in the lineup soon, which is a good thing, obviously, for his health. He's been out of the lineup a little bit here. But if you look ahead to the schedule, they play at home tomorrow night against the Florida Panthers. Then they go on a pretty hefty road trip for the rest of the month. So he could be out. He's going to make the trip, but he could be out for still a significant amount of time. He could miss a couple games here and there. But looks like he'll probably join them soon on this road trip. And they're probably going to need him. They're going to need some depth on this road trip because, again, it's a pretty hefty one. They're on the road for quite a few games here. So, and obviously they play the Florida Panthers, which was a tough game. We'll get to that specifically later in the video, but another tough game there on Tuesday night at home. But to get back to Logan Stanley, I've seen the comments. I've seen everything online. Jet fans, not a big fan of Logan Stanley. I think they'd be okay with him out of the lineup, but the fact of the matter is he is a part of the team. He is a pretty good defenseman. He's an NHL defenseman. He has that experience. So I think, whether you like it or not, the Jets want a guy like that in the lineup over somebody who has less experience. And I think if the Jets are going to add, like you said, at the deadline, it is going to be on defense, and I'm not sure Logan Stanley even comes out of the lineup, but if there is anyone that's going to, it probably is him. But I think the Jets are missing him a little bit. Even if Jet fans don't feel that way, I think they are missing him a little bit. But like you said, to the lines, not much changed here heading into another battle, a home and home with the Florida Panthers, and it wasn't a good one on Saturday night.
No, they have a chance now to get their revenge at home. And again, like you mentioned, no change to the lineup, the same forwards you've been seeing, Shifley, or Connor Shifley, Velarde, Perfetti, Nemestikov, Ehlers, the classic guys with, of course, Gustafsson in rotating. But the interesting thing here is, again, you look at the defense core. You have Morrissey, DeMello, Sandberg, Pionk, and then Hayden Fleury and Colin Miller. And Hayden Fleury hasn't, it's been up and down. And again, the Jets have played worse since Logan Stanley's been out. The past, they got 2 losses. I'm not saying it's a direct correlation. There's a bunch of different things. And if they want to start changing things in and out, as Ville Heinola is a guy. Again, they got him back in the Jacob Trouba trade, sorry, and could be a guy who also factors in. He was a highly touted prospect at one point, but yeah, I think they're going to play Logan Stanley when he comes back. He brings some physicality. I mean, they don't have the most physical defensive core. Like they have some guys who are physical, but when you're talking about, and I'm not saying you need that necessarily to win, because skill is obviously the most important thing, but I think there's going to be some times, and Jets fans will probably disagree, where Logan Stanley can have some sort of impact. That being said, he's had a horrible season. He's had some horrible turnovers, some horrible penalties. He needs to be way more disciplined, and hopefully this time away has kind of helped factor into that, especially ahead of a huge game. You need to bounce back against the Florida Panthers because it was an embarrassing showing, and you can kind of give them the pass because, again, they're 15-3. But, the power rankings, the Jets are no longer number 1. Everybody's hopping off the Jets bandwagon. They're going to be perfectly fine. I just think they were off to a little bit of a little tiny bit. You can't even call it a rut. It's 2 losses in a row. But if it continues to pile up, the narrative might return of Jets only beat bad teams.
Yeah, that could return, but I don't think that's the case anyway. They beat some good teams in that historic run that they had, and yes, they came back down to earth a little bit, if you even want to call it that. Like you said, they're still 15-3. Fantastic start to the season. But in talking about the defense, like you said, Neil Pionk, as a result of what happened on Saturday night, which you can call it what you want, a hip check, clipping, whatever you have it, but the league has classified it as clipping. Has been fined $5,000. I'm not sure if you saw the play, Nick, but it was kind of a hip check. He clipped his knee, so I understand the fine. At least it wasn't a suspension or anything. Pionk has done this in the past to other players, like Connor Bedard, for example. He's known to throw the body sometimes, especially off the rush. If a player's not looking or not expecting it, he might throw a little hip check there. So that's what I thought that was. He clipped the knee. Unfortunate play. Gets fined $5,000. But one thing I thought was interesting too, like you brought up, with obviously Logan Stanley out, they have Hayden Fleury in there right now. I wonder how long it takes to see Heinola in the lineup as well, because like you said, he was considered a pretty highly touted prospect at one point, and I think the clock is kind of ticking on him. And it's not even necessarily his fault. He's dealt with some devastating injuries over the last couple of years, and having to get back to fully healthy and get back in the lineup and skating and all that. So it's not necessarily his fault, but it hasn't worked out for him on the team so far. But do you see him getting into a game here? Because Logan Stanley looks like he won't be back immediately. Like, there's still going to be a couple games. So would you keep Hayden Fleury, or would you put in somebody maybe a little less inexperienced in Heinola?
Yeah, again, Heinola been dealing with injuries a lot throughout his entire prospect career. So I'd like to see them change something up if these losses continue to pile up. I don't think Hayden Fleury has necessarily been playing horrible, but I also don't think he's a long-term solution. And Heinola, again, we've seen him play a handful of games with the Jets over the past handful of seasons. I think he has a bit more potential, so it'll be interesting. But also let us know down below what your thoughts are on that. Yeah, quickly on the Pionk thing. Ultimately, he probably deserves it, and we've seen a lot of fines and suspensions across the NHL this weekend. But that'll wrap it up. Let us know down below what your thoughts are. And again, check out Jets Digest. The link will be in the description and the pinned comment as well. If you're enjoying the daily Jets videos, go subscribe there. But also subscribe here. We'll see you guys later.